Welcome to today's lecture. We will talk about the pause. The moment when you do nothing at all. Very seldom today we experience this because we live in a modern day and age of constant doings. From morning until late evening we are keeping ourselves constantly occupied with different doings. And this is something we directly experience when we honestly examine the landscape of modern thought and daily life. We find a culture that is radically intolerant of the pause. We live in an age of algorithmic reflexivity, where we are constantly incentivized to react. We equate speed with intelligence, accumulation with knowledge, and the relentless action with productivity. We are terrified of the void, of the silence, and of the space between things. Very important. The space between things. But what if this frantic momentum is actually a form of blindness? What if the most profound moments of learning, understanding, and human freedom do not happen in the doing, but in the deliberate, conscious suspension of doing? Today we will dissect the architecture of the pause. We'll explore how the conscious refusal to react, the space between stimulus and response, is not an empty void, but the very foundation of cognition, wisdom, and agency. First part here, the somatic trap, end-gaining and the loss of the present. To understand the necessity of the pause, we must first diagnose the disease of our habitual momentum. We find a perfectly articulate vocabulary for this in the work of F.M. Alexander, the creator of the Alexander technique. Alexander observed a universal human flaw he called end-gaining. End-gaining is the frantic, unthinking rush to achieve a goal. It is the grasping for the end result while completely ignoring, and usually corrupting, the process required to get there. We see this physically all the time. When a person goes to sit in a chair, they often throw their head back, compress their spine, and hold their breath. They do not care how they get to the chair. Their brain has simply commanded, be in the chair. And the body responds with an automatic, tense, animalistic contraction to achieve the end. The intellect does this too. When we skim a complex philosophical text just to say we finished it, or when we formulate our rebuttal while another person is still speaking, we are intellectually end-gaining. We are rushing to the end of knowing, bypassing actual understanding. Alexander's antidote is a foundational concept he calls inhibition. It is crucial to note that this is not a Freudian repression. In Alexander's framework, inhibition is the highly deliberate conscious pause. It is the withholding of consent to your own habitual reactions. When the stimulus arrives, hello, the urge to stand up, the ring of a phone, the provocation of an argument. Inhibition is the fraction of a second where you intercede and say, no, I will not react as I always do. By stopping the habitual animalistic reflex, the pause creates a clearing. A Heideggerian Lichtung, if you like. It forces you to abandon the end and focus entirely on what Alexander called the means whereby. There you go.
Whereby.
The conscious present moment process of moving, thinking, and being. Isn't that grand?
Means whereby.
The neurological space, the grasping hand, and the open mind. This concept of endgaining and the necessity of the pause is not merely a theory of movement, it is written into our neuroanatomy. The psychiatrist and philosopher Iain McGilchrist has revolutionized our understanding how the two hemispheres of the brain handle the world differently. The left hemisphere of the brain is the ultimate endgainer.
Oh.
Evolutionary, it's designed to manipulate the world, to grasp tools, and to secure prey, which is why it controls our dominant right hand. Its attention is narrow, sharp, fragmented, and focused entirely on utility. It looks at the world and asks, what can I do with this? How can I use this to reach my target? The left hemisphere, on the other hand, or on that hand, cannot tolerate a pause. It is a machine of immediate categorization and action. However, true understanding, empathy, and wisdom resides in the right hemisphere. The right hemisphere sustains broad, open, uncommitted attention. It does not grasp, it receives. It understands context, irony, metaphor, the passage of time, and the rich, chaotic abundance of the lived world. For the right hemisphere to do its work, to synthesize information and see the world as it actually is, the left hemisphere's grasping mechanism must be paused. The inhibition Alexander spoke of is neurologically the silencing of the left hemisphere's urge to immediately manipulate the situation. Furthermore, modern neuroscience points to the default mode network, DMN. This is the network in the brain that activates only then when we stop focusing on external tasks. When we pause, daydream, or simply stare out of a window. The DMN synthesizes disparate memories, connect ideas, and generates profound insights. The famous shower thought is a direct result of pausing our end-gaining behavior, allowing the brain's background architecture to finally speak. The intellectual suspension, negative capability, and the epoche. If we move from the laboratory to the library, we find that the greatest thinkers and artists have institutionalized the pause as the only valid method of discovering truth. In 1817, the Romantic poet John Keats coined a term that perfectly mirrors Alexander's inhibition: negative capability. Keats defined this as the capacity of a person to be capable of being in uncertainties, mysteries, doubts, without any irritable reaching after fact or reason. That irritable reaching is intellectual endgaining. Keats argued that the greatest minds, he used Shakespeare as his prime example, possesses the ability to pause, to stop, to inhibit. They can sit in the discomfort of the unknown without prematurely forcing an answer. They allow the complexity of reality to reveal itself in its own time. A century later, the philosopher Edmund Husserl, the founder of phenomenology, formalized this idea for modern philosophy. Husserl realized that human beings walk around in what he called the natural attitude, our everyday, habitual, unthinking assumption that we know exactly how the world works. Husserl argued that to actually understand reality, we must perform an act he called epoché. The epoché is a philosophical pause. It is the conscious decision to suspend all of our pre-existing beliefs, scientific theories, and habitual judgments about a thing, and simply look at the phenomenon as it presents itself to us. If we do not pause and suspend our habitual thinking, we are never truly learning. We are just projecting our old prejudices onto new data. Now to the Eastern parallel. Wu Wei and non-action. It is essential to recognize that this is a globally recognized truth. In Taoist philosophy, the highest form of virtue and intelligence is found in the concept of Wu Wei,
Wu Wei,
which translates to non-action or effortless action. Wu Wei is not laziness, apathy, or a vegetative state. Rather, it is the profound refusal to force your will upon the world. It is the inhibition of the ego's desire to end gain and micromanage reality. By pausing the frantic left hemisphere desire to control everything, a person practicing Wu Wei aligns themselves with the natural flow of the world, the Tao. They act only when the situation naturally calls for it, acting with perfect timing and zero wasted energy. Psychology of freedom, Frankl and May. Finally, we must look at the existential weight of the pause. Refraining from animalistic, reactive behavior is not just about physical grace, neurological balance, or philosophical clarity. It is the very definition of human freedom. The psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl observed the darkest depths of human suffering and automatic, brutal behavior. Out of this, he formulated a philosophy of ultimate agency. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Nowhere else. Animals are bound by the immediate change of stimulus or response. A predator sees prey, it attacks. It is pure, uninhibited reaction. Human beings, however, possess the divine machinery of the pause. The existential psychologist Rollo May expanded heavily on Frankl's observation. May argued that trauma and neurosis actually shrink this space. When we are traumatized or living in chronic anxiety, we lose our ability to pause, We become purely reactive, lashing out at the slightest trigger. May wrote, "Human freedom involves our capacity to pause between the stimulus and response, and in that pause to choose the one response toward which we wish to throw our weight." Conclusion. The plenum of the pause. In conclusion, we must radically reframe how we view the break, the hesitation, and the pause. We are conditioned to view a pause as an absence, a void, a failure of momentum, a lapse in the productivity. But through the lenses of Alexander's somatic inhibition, Keats' negative capability, McGilchrist's neurology, Husserl's phenomenology, and Frankl's existentialism, a completely different picture emerges. The pause is not an empty void, it is a plenum. A space that is absolutely full. It's the most dynamic, active, demanding state a human being can achieve. It takes profound energy to inhibit the animalistic urge to react. It takes a tremendous courage to suspend our habitual thinking, to sit in the uncertainty of not knowing, and to refuse the comfortable lie of a quick conclusion. But it is only in that suspended space, free from end-gaining, free from irritable reaching after fact, free from Google Translator, free from Wikipedia, free from the tyranny of immediate utility, that the richness of the world can reveal itself and a true profound knowledge can finally take root. I usually think about drawing. When you draw something, something shown by the famed drawer and artist and also author Betty Edwards, author of Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. When you are not informed or have not learned certain principles, you will always draw the same symbolic drawing. And that is something we all do. No matter where you school or where you're from, like 95% of us draw the same way. It's a symbolic way of drawing. This is the immediate reactive response to the idea of drawing or understanding something. So if you don't pause, you will always go to the same spot. It's almost like a record that's got stuck in the gramophone. It repeats and it repeats and it repeats. The only way to escape that well-proven tendency, this proof for this goes way back, is the pause. If you don't achieve a pause, you will neither achieve any development, you will not learn, you will not change, and above all, you will not grow. The pause is the most important door to entering into the richer world of the right hemisphere. And you need to have this zero moment where nothing happens in order for everything to happen. It sounds like a paradox, but it is exactly the modern tendency to reach directly for everything. That is the reason why we lost everything. If we want to regain that everything, that enormous richness and wealth of experience, we must refrain from direct action, at least for a couple of seconds. Give it 10, 15 seconds. Then you will be rewarded by the most absolutist, greatest richness you can ever reach. The depth of reality will be able to reach into you as well. It's a matter of receiving, not grasping out, anxiously, greedy. I want to understand that. When it becomes half aggressive, it is not a good tendency because you sort of circumcise or castrate the object or the thing you want to know in advance. Therefore, leaving no space, I think that's a good word, no space at all for any learning to become real or understanding. So give it a pause. You had a question there.
Let me stand here. I think it's better. More pleasant for the viewer. I see. Hello. So let me compare with how cats and dogs react. If you throw a ball at a dog, it doesn't think, it only rushes like a mad man after the ball. But the cat, on the other hand, waits a few seconds to, let's say, to take a bird. Usually they go like this and then wait a few seconds. And I'm thinking about a motto by the Emperor Augustus. He said, "Festina lente," which means hasten slowly. Festina lente, hasten slowly. So the cat is like this embodiment, perhaps, of festina lente. So they look at the bird and then a few seconds and then they attack.
Yeah, they prepare. In the same way, the brain needs to prepare as well. So if you rush, and that, of course, the pause doesn't need to be very long when it comes to thinking, but 1 or 2 seconds, if you can achieve that, you will be able to reach into the much greater depths of the right hemisphere. So the cat, why not? Think of the cat in comparison to the dog. Why, thank you very much for that.
One last, very slow. So Husserl about epoche that it is typographically is usually shown with square brackets.
Yeah.
Representing the pause with square brackets. But I never been fond of square brackets because for me they represent the wall. Like here, there, you are right and I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Instead, I would prefer the smooth parentheses around epoche, the pause. The pauses are like, because that's like you are endorsing the pause, which is smooth like a parenthesis. Parenthesis.
Well, thank you very much for that. Thanks very much. Thank you, listeners. Now we have the first step towards reaching into the right hemisphere. Bye-bye.